My husband gave the life-saving medicine to his lover's son and killed our daughter. I was devastated and swore to never look back after rebirth. My daughter and my husband's lover's son fell ill and were hospitalized at the same time. My husband gave the only life-saving medicine to his lover's son. My daughter died, and I completely lost hope in my husband. I left a divorce agreement and went to a small mountain village to teach. That day, it rained heavily and the mountains shook. I saw my cold-hearted husband moving heavy stones, his hands covered in blood and deep wounds visible. When I woke up again, it was the day my daughter was fighting for her life. Tim, this time, I won't look back. After the earthquake, heavy rain followed. It was like the whole world was wrapped in a curtain of despair. I was floating in the air, watching a team of soldiers rush to the scene. I died. He should be happy, right? I was trapped under a heavy beam, my consciousness fading. That was my last thought before I died. The earthquake came unexpectedly. I only had time to organize the older kids to run out. There were still 2 7- or 8-year-old kids in the classroom, too scared to move, crying loudly. I turned and ran back, seeing the beam about to fall on them, and shielding them with my body. The beam hit my back, and a metallic taste filled my throat. Even breathing was painful. I wasn't afraid of death. With my daughter gone, I had been living like a zombie. Half a year ago, I couldn't save my daughter. Today, I must save these 2 kids. I was glad I could finally see my daughter. Anne, Mommy is coming to find you. As my consciousness faded, the pain disappeared. When I came to my senses, I was floating in mid-air. A team of soldiers was advancing in the rain. The person leading them looked familiar. As they got closer, I realized it was Tim. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a narrow waist and determined eyes. He exuded an air of righteousness that was reassuring. Unfortunately, that shoulder never belonged to me. After the shock came the expected calm. Qinyuan County was under Tim's military district. It was normal for him to come for earthquake relief. I wouldn't flatter myself by thinking he came here for me. The village chief, wearing a raincoat, greeted Tim as soon as he arrived. Tim, when the earthquake happened, Teacher Selena was giving a class. The kids who ran out said she stayed behind to save the students in the classroom. I raised my eyebrows. Tim had gotten a promotion in the year since I left. The village chief pointed to the ruins, his face dark with guilt and worry. Teacher Selena was a good person. She never looked down on us villagers. She taught seriously and was kind. Everyone in the village liked her. Tim's eyes, like a hawk, scanned the collapsed houses. A slight frown, and I saw a trace of anxiety on his face. In 6 years of marriage, Tim had always been cold towards me. I must be seeing things. Without proper tools, they had to clear the bricks, tiles, and beams by hand. Tim didn't hold back, his hands gradually getting torn by the rough bricks and stones. Blood trickled out, then got washed away by the rain. Tim, go bandage your hands. We can handle the rest. A soldier couldn't help but advise, seeing Tim so reckless. Tim didn't stop or look up, refusing. I'm fine. Just make sure everyone is careful. The soldier, knowing Tim's character, worried but couldn't convince him, so he helped him instead. About half an hour later, the rubble was finally cleared. The 2 kids I had protected were only slightly injured and were taken home by their parents. Floating in the air, I saw my own body. Quite an odd experience. Tim was first stunned, then ran towards me. My body, deformed under the beam's weight, wasn't exactly a pleasant sight. He knelt beside me, holding me in his arms, helpless. Selena, I'm sorry, I'm late. The man whispered in a daze. I've missed you and every day this past year, reminiscing our days together. I'm sorry. I was too foolish to realize my feelings until after you left. If I had known letting you go would lead to this separation, I would never have agreed to it. Tim's eyes gradually reddened, tears mixing with the rain. I was shocked. Tim crying for me. Before I could process my shock, I heard Tim's pleading, filled with helplessness. Selena, I love you, please come back. I've already lost our daughter. I can't lose you too. The man's voice was full of sorrow, like a goose that had lost its mate. It was quite ironic. I fell in love with Tim at first sight, married him, and was a good wife for 6 years. I carefully sought his affection, but he was too stingy, always cold, aloof, treating Kitty and her son kindly, but not me. He even gave up our daughter for her son. His current regret and love might be real, but the past indifference, neglect, and favoritism hurt more. Tim continued to express his true feelings and remorse. I closed my eyes in pain. Tim, it's too late. Once upon a time, you didn't value my love. Now, I don't want yours. Our marriage was a complete mistake. If I could do it again, I wouldn't marry you. I muttered to myself. Tim seemed to sense something and looked up at me. I was clearly just a spirit now. He shouldn't have been able to see me, but his gaze still sent a shiver through my soul. Then, I plunged into darkness. "Doctor, how is Johnny? Please, you have to save my son." A woman's voice, tinged with cries, echoed softly. It made one think the owner must be fragile. It sounded familiar. Who was it? I leaned against the cold wall, shook my head vigorously, and finally, the blurred figure became clear. It was Ketty. She was collapsing in my husband's arms, crying pitifully. My husband Tim was holding her gently, his face full of concern, looking at her intently. The sharp scent of disinfectant snapped me back to my senses. Hospital, Ketty, Tim, an audacious thought popped into my head. I had come back to life, back to the day a year ago when my daughter was critically ill. This time, I must save my daughter. As I pondered, the doctor's voice rang out again, saying the exact same words as in my past life. "Ketty, don't worry, we will do everything we can to save the patient." The doctor paused, his eyes scanning the three of us, carefully choosing his words. "Johnny and Anne both have the same illness, but there is only one dose of medicine in the hospital. Getting more from the city hospital requires a report, which will take at least 3 hours to arrive. I'm afraid neither of them can wait that long." The doctor's implication was clear. There was only enough medicine to save one child. Both were 4 years old, with similar conditions. Who should we save? Ketty was stunned as if struck by lightning, her tears falling like raindrops. Truly pitiable. "Tim, it's all my fault. I'm not strong enough. If I hadn't been weak during my pregnancy, and had Johnny prematurely, he wouldn't have been so frail and gotten this illness." Tim clenched his fists, veins bulging. I knew what he was struggling with. Seeing Tim's silence, Ketty took out a handkerchief to wipe her tears and played her trump card. Poor Johnny lost his father at birth. If Charles were still here, he would find any way to save his son. Charles was always Ketty's trump card with Tim. Tim and Charles shared a brotherly bond. 4 years ago, on a mission, Charles took a bullet for Tim and died heroically. The news caused Ketty to go into premature labor, and with Tim's hidden feelings for her, affection, pity, guilt, all these emotions intertwined, Tim took great care of Ketty and her son. If Johnny was sick, if there was a problem at home, if Johnny got into trouble at school, it was Tim who handled everything. Everyone praised him for his loyalty and sense of duty. Only I knew how this loyal and dutiful Tim neglected his wife and daughter. Sure enough, I saw Tim unclench his fists, take a deep breath, as if making a decision. He looked at me. "Selena, let's save Johnny first. He's been weak since birth. Anne is healthier, and can hold on until the medicine arrives. Anne might seem healthier now, but she was frequently ill before turning 3. While Tim was tending to Ketty, I was the one caring for Anne alone. Do you think Anna was born healthy? My hard-earned efforts to raise and were not for you to repay a debt." The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. "Why, we should listen to the doctor about who to save." The doctor finally noticed the tension and broke into a cold sweat. He was just a small-time doctor, dealing with 2 military officers here. He couldn't afford to offend either. The middle-aged doctor stammered, and Ketty couldn't hold back any longer. She began to cry again, feeling miserable and imploring me. "Selena, please give the medicine to Johnny. He's a preemie and can't wait." I grew up in a family that favored boys over girls. I was lucky to marry Charles in the military, but he passed away so soon, leaving me with just Johnny. "Selena, you're different from me. You had a good upbringing and married Tim, a successful man. Everyone envies your family." Immersed in her emotions, she tried to hold my hand in her plea. "Selena, give Johnny a chance to live. Anne is healthier, she can wait." "Ketty, why should my daughter sacrifice for your son?" I gathered strength in my right hand and slapped her hard on the face. I raised my left hand for another slap, but a large hand gripped it firmly. I knew it was Tim without looking. He let go of my hand and turned to comfort Ketty. "Talk all you want, but don't hit people." I hit her because she deserves it. Playing the fragile flower, Tim would always be biased towards her and her son. "Tim, I'm fine." Ketty ignored Tim's comfort, looking at me with tearful eyes. "Selena, as long as you agree to give the medicine to Johnny, you can hit me as much as you want." She took my hand and placed it on her face. Enough. Tim's rage boiled over, stopping Ketty, and then he looked at me with a final ultimatum. "Selena, Charles saved my life. I can't let Johnny die." He turned to the doctor. "Doctor, give the medicine to Johnny. I'll bear all the consequences." "With what?" "Last time, Johnny recovered, but my Anne died. Didn't you live perfectly fine afterward?" Knowing the outcome, I couldn't help but listen to him say it again. I wiped away the tears from my face. "Tim, thinking about how Charles saved your life and your deep bond, I tolerated how you took extra care of Ketty and her son. I never said anything, but I didn't expect you to be so ready to abandon your own daughter. And having a father like you is her misfortune. Tim tried to explain. Selena, I haven't given up on Anne. The doctor said, in 3 hours at the earliest, they can adjust the medication. Then Anne will be saved. I mean, I do owe Charles my life. You're going to exchange our daughter's life for his son's life. I stared straight at Tim, tears in my eyes, filled with anger and disappointment. Enough, Tim. You owe Charles your life. If you want to act as a servant to his wife and kids, fine by me. But if you've chosen to give up on Anne, then from now on, you don't deserve to be her father. I will save my daughter myself. Right after saying that, I pushed Tim and Ketty aside and quickly walked towards Anne's room. The little one lay in her white bed, her face flushed unnaturally due to illness. My Anne is still here. Last time, I listened to the doctor and Tim, waiting painfully for the medicine in the hospital. But the medicine never came, and I lost my daughter forever. This time, I will definitely save her. I walked to the bed and picked Anne up. Mommy, I feel so uncomfortable. Anne woke up from my actions, her eyes half open and blurred. Her innocent voice seemed distant, and tears blurred my vision. I blinked to let the tears fall, then put on a smile and softly comforted her. Anne, don't be afraid. Mommy's here. Mommy's taking you to a big hospital. You'll feel better soon. As I spoke, I gently patted Anne's little body and carried her outside. Just as I reached the door, I ran into Tim. Where are you taking Anne? I looked at him with sarcastic eyes, not wanting to waste any more time with him. I'm taking Anne to the city hospital. What? Leave her here to die? I tried to walk around Tim, but he blocked me. Losing my patience, I snapped at him. Good dogs don't block the way. Tim choked but struggled to justify himself. It's not safe to take her to the city alone, without knowing the place. How about? I retorted sarcastically, looking at him with amusement. So what, Tim? You're coming to the city hospital with us. How could Tim bear to leave Ketty alone? She lost her husband and has to take care of a sick child. Poor thing. He probably didn't expect me to be so straightforward. Tim was speechless for a moment and reluctantly put his hand down. Selena, I remember your grandma had a student working at the city hospital. How about calling him to take care of Anne? Ketty and Johnny really need me here. I have a colleague who happens to be going to the city. I can ask them to take you and Anne to the hospital. The military folks traveling to the city have tasks and need multiple approvals, which is complicated and time-consuming. I can't wait. Anne can't wait. No need. I'll find a car myself. Tim, having let the doctor prioritize Johnny, seemed to have found some sense of responsibility due to my sharp critique that he didn't deserve to be Anne's father. Alright, you go first. Once Johnny gets better, I'll come see you. I was indifferent. Anyone can say pretty words. Talking the talk doesn't mean walking the walk. I've heard them too many times, but he always fails to deliver. Given another chance, I won't yearn for his love or believe his promises. No expectations mean no disappointments. I didn't look back at him and left. I managed to find a ride to the city hospital with some connections and money. The wind rushed through the car window, messing up my hair as we sped along. In the silent atmosphere, time felt excruciatingly long. An hour later, I arrived at the city hospital with Anne. Standing at the entrance was a mid-aged man with black-framed glasses, looking scholarly and kind. I quickened my pace. Uncle David. The mid-aged man spotted me and greeted warmly. Selena, you're here. I got your call an hour ago. I understand Anne's condition. We can treat it here. Don't worry. I followed Uncle David into the hospital. Thank you, Uncle David. Really? Uncle David feigned anger, his smiling face falling slightly, looking a bit upset. Your grandma is my mentor, and your father and I are close friends. I watched you grow up and see you as my niece. Just giving a heads up to Anne's doctor isn't worthy of such formal gratitude. Uncle David was my grandma's disciple. Grandma came from a family of doctors. She studied abroad when young and returned skilled. She met Grandpa in the military and they became comrades. They had only my dad, who wasn't interested in medicine, but yearned for the military. Gradually, Grandma gave up on teaching him and instead discovered Uncle David's medical talent, making him her disciple. I glanced at Uncle David, smiling as we reached the clinic. Luckily, we arrived in time. This illness is common in kids, and although the mortality rate is high, timely medicine can turn things around. I'll have a nurse take you to the ward, and the medicine will come soon. I cried tears of joy. Thank you so much, doctor. A week later, Anne was better. Today is the day we're leaving the hospital. I'm packing up while chatting with Anne. Anne is sitting obediently in a chair by the bed, munching on an apple. Mom, are we going home today? I smiled and turned to look at her. Yeah, are you happy about that, Anne? The little girl lowered her head, thinking so hard she forgot to eat her apple. I don't want to go home. Johnny always takes my snacks and toys. Dad always tells me since I'm the older sister, I have to share with my brother. He always holds Johnny and never holds me. When she mentioned Dad, Anne's mood visibly dropped. Mom, Dad is nicer to Johnny. Does that mean he doesn't like me? My marriage to Tim was arranged. Grandpa and Tim's grandpa were best friends who saved each other's lives. Tim's grandpa suggested our families unite through marriage to show gratitude. Unfortunately, both grandpas only had sons, so the marriage arrangement passed to our generation. Due to job relocations, Grandpa and Tim's grandpa moved to different places, and our families had less contact, except for holiday gifts. My mom died from childbirth complications, and my dad died on a mission when I was 13. Grandpa and Grandma were both war veterans with lingering health issues, and they passed away 6 years ago. From a family of 5, it was just me and my grandparents left. 6 years ago, when Grandpa got seriously ill, he worried about me being alone and contacted Tim's grandpa about fulfilling the marriage agreement. I wasn't sure what to think. If getting married would give Grandpa peace, I was willing to do it. Before we got our marriage certificate, I met Tim and was pleasantly surprised. 6 months ago, while walking through a narrow alley, some thugs tried to harass me. Tim appeared like a hero and dealt with them, even taking them to the police station. It was late, and he worried about my safety, so he walked me home. Most women look up to heroes, and I was no exception. But it all happened too fast that night, and I never got to ask his name or where he lived. Now, seeing him again filled me with joy. I never expected my husband-to-be would be my savior. He was good-looking, tall, and heroic. These qualities made me look forward to our marriage. With pressure from both grandpas, Tim and I got married, holding the marriage certificate like a trophy. I was thrilled and didn't notice the darkness in Tim's eyes. I threw myself into this marriage wholeheartedly, but now my passion has faded, leaving me bruised inside. Even though it's true that Tim favors Johnny, how could I tell my young daughter her dad prefers another child over her? That would be too cruel. I walked over to Anne, crouching down to make eye contact with her. Because Johnny doesn't have a dad, your dad treats him better. But Dad loves Anne a lot too. When you were little, Dad held you all the time. Even I didn't believe that. I quietly cursed myself, forcing a smile and gently touching my daughter's round head. Anne, if Mommy and Daddy live apart, who would you want to live with? She threw herself into my arms, saying loudly, I want to stay with Mommy. I love Mommy. Kids know who really loves them. I straightened her pigtails, picked her up, and said, Mommy and Anne will always be together. Let's go home now. Okay. By the time we got home, it was already 4 p.m. A thin layer of dust had settled on the furniture. Tim must have been too busy staying at the hospital to clean up. I quickly cleaned the living room and Anne's room, then took her downstairs to buy groceries. Many parents were outside playing with their children. As we passed a big tree, Mrs. Wilson called out to me, and a few others gathered around. Selena, I heard you took Anne to the city hospital. Is she okay now? I squeezed Anne's hand, smiling as I replied, thank you for asking. Anne's fine now. Look at her. She's all energetic. Mrs. Wilson nodded. That's good. Anne will be healthy from now on. Right after, someone chimed in with a snide comment. Selena, you took Anne to the city hospital, and Tim didn't go with you. Ketty's kid was in the hospital recently, and Tim was there all the time, like a dad. Anyone would think they're the real family. She was known for her loud mouth, and I knew nothing good would come from her. I quickly sent Anne off to play with other kids. Some things are better left unsaid in front of children. I forced a smile, trying to justify Tim's actions, but everyone could tell I wasn't being sincere. Charles saved Tim's life, and Ketty's alone with no family. It's only right for Tim to help his brother's wife and child. My parents taught me to be strong and magnanimous. I could handle taking Anne to the doctor alone if Tim was helping Ketty. My explanation wasn't perfect, but hinted at the truth about Tim's bias toward Ketty and her child. All the women there could read between the lines. If their husbands favored another family's child over their own sick daughter, they'd have caused a scene. Yet here I was, defending Tim. For years, everyone saw how Tim treated Ketty and her child. In the past, I stayed quiet, so they just saw it as a curiosity. But now, I refuse to endure it any longer. Some people don't know when to stop. They will have to face the consequences. Mrs. Wilson looked at me with concern and patted my hand. I know you're understanding and reasonable, but Tim can't neglect his own family while taking care of Ketty and her son. We women need to show some weakness sometimes. It's better to talk things out with your husband instead of holding on to grudges. Her words were well-meaning, but they went in one ear and out the other. I didn't want to argue with Mrs. Wilson. I made some perfunctory remarks and took Anne shopping. I could hear them discussing behind me. I've noticed something off with Tim. He always goes to Ketty's house whenever he's free and stands with Ketty and her son like they're a family. Tim is so focused on his friend's kid that he neglects his own daughter. I think Ketty's no good either. She keeps calling Tim every day. Clearly, she knows how to manipulate men. The murmurs faded as I reached the store with Anne. After cleaning up, I put Anne to bed, closed the bedroom door, and sat alone in the living room. The warm yellow light illuminated the space, while the moonlight from the balcony cast a somber glow. I looked around at the decorations in the living room. The curtains, sofa, coffee table, and tablecloth were all carefully chosen by me. Tim had been busy with training, missions, and work affairs. Then, following Charles's death, Tim frequently visited Ketty under the guise of caring for his friend's widow. At first, I believed Tim was just helping out a friend's spouse, but then I saw the way he looked at Ketty. I knew those eyes well. I admired Tim and recognized that gaze. That night, I cried my heart out under the covers. Logically, I knew I should cut my losses, but I couldn't let go. I believed that if I was a good wife to Tim and relieved his worries, he would notice me. But I was so wrong. A first love that never materializes turns into an everlasting regret. It stays in his heart and becomes my perpetual shadow. In this life and the past, I've come to see Tim clearly. I'm done trying so hard to please someone who doesn't love me. Cutting my losses in time is also self-respect and self-love. This time, I'm leaving him, and I won't look back. The clock slowly ticked to 9. The night was as dark as ink. I heard the sound of the door opening. It was Tim coming back. Seeing me in the living room, he seemed surprised. "Selina, you're back. Why didn't you let me know in advance? I could have picked you and Anne up." Those who care don't need to be taught, and those who don't never learn. If Tim really cared about Anne, why didn't he call the city hospital or come to see his daughter? I let out a cold laugh and spoke with sarcasm. How could Tim have the time to pick us up? He must be busy at the hospital taking care of someone else's kid. My mocking tone made Tim realize my discontent, and he irritably unbuttoned 2 buttons on his collar. I admit I didn't think this through, but Johnny is seriously ill, and Ketty has no one else to help her. Ketty taking care of her kid alone is pitiful. I feel like I have no husband, because my husband is busy playing father and husband at someone else's house. In comparison, I'm the one who is really pitiful. If you love taking care of Ketty and her son so much, why not make them your real family? I interrupted impatiently. Tim, let's get a divorce. Since my rebirth, I had imagined countless times how I'd asked him for a divorce, thinking I would feel heartache and sadness. But as the words came out, I felt calm, like an undisturbed lake. I watched Tim's shocked, astonished, and disbelieving expression with great interest. "Selina, why do you want a divorce? Is it because of what happened with Anne? We've been married for 6 years, and I've kept the house in perfect order." Tim never had to worry about chores or social engagements. He's rigid and upright, disliking changes in his routine. Yet his confusion arose from disrupting his lifestyle, not because of me as a person. I sighed. It's not just about Anne. While taking care of her at the hospital, I thoroughly reevaluated our marriage. When I married you, I was so excited and hopeful, but when I realized you liked Ketty, I was heartbroken. Tim didn't expect that I had noticed his feelings for Ketty, and thought his pretense of taking care of a friend's widow had concealed it well. He became defensive, flustered at having his secret exposed. "Selina, you're overthinking things. Ketty and I are just friends. I'm looking after them because Charles saved my life." Defending his beloved, his words poured out. I chuckled dismissively, playing with a strand of hair. "Maybe you and Ketty are just friends, but your actions show you favor them. Tim, you can fool others, but not yourself or me. I used to love you, so I know what it looks like when someone loves another." Without letting him retort, I gazed into the inky night, memories surfacing with the cicada's song. "Do you remember when I was postpartum with Anne?" Tim looked puzzled, clearly forgotten. "I had just given birth to, and when you returned from a mission, and told me Charles had died saving you. Ketty went into early labor from grief, and you spent day and night with them, making formula, washing diapers, and having someone make soup for Ketty. You did everything a father and husband should. While Ketty enjoyed your care, I had to look after Anne alone. The winter water was so cold, and my husband was washing someone else's child's diapers, ignoring his own wife and daughter. Tears slipped down my cheeks, and I wiped them away. Once upon a time, the days were hard to bear, but now I can talk about them calmly. I felt sorry for Ketty losing her husband and having no one to rely on. I thought that once her child grew older, things would get better. But I didn't know how huge the responsibility of raising a child was. You have to worry about what they eat and wear, and when they get sick, it tears at your heart. When they grow up, you worry about their education. After that, you fret about their jobs, then their marriages, and finally help with their kids. I paused and looked seriously at Tim. Tim, given your bond with Charles and Ketty, you can't possibly just abandon Ketty and Johnny. But I don't want to share my husband with anyone else, nor do I want Anne to share her father's love with other children. They say both hands are made of flesh, but they aren't weighed equally. Both kids got sick at the same time, and you chose to forsake Anne. That's the best proof. Disappointment builds up piece by piece until you just give up. Tim never cared about what I thought before. As long as everything was peaceful at home, he was content to focus entirely on Ketty and her son. But now that I voiced my dissatisfaction, he couldn't pretend not to know anymore. He hurriedly tried to defend himself, reaching out to grab my hand, but I pulled away. Selena, I admit I've neglected you and Anne in the past. Please give me another chance to make it up to you both. Tim's promises are as believable as pigs flying. Tim, I don't need your compensation. Save your fatherly love for your best friend's son. I'm definitely getting a divorce. Seeing how resolute I was, Tim's eyes showed a plea. Selena, think about Anne. She's so young and needs her father. Can't we just live together as a family? I was so infuriated by his self-righteousness that I laughed. I already told you at the hospital when you gave up on Anne, you're unfit to be Anne's father. Do you have the nerve to bring up Anne? Have you ever washed her diapers? How many times have you rocked her to sleep at the city hospital? And asked me why you always held Johnny and not her. She wondered if you didn't like her. Hearing that broke my heart, and filled me with shame. It was my fault for not choosing a good father for her. Even a child can see what's clear. Do you think by pretending to be deaf and dumb, your favoritism and neglect would vanish? As I bombarded him with questions, Tim ran his hands through his hair in frustration. He looked up, his eyes red with exhaustion. I do love Anne. Actions speak louder than words. This so-called love of his that only moves his lips is laughable. I stifled a laugh. Maybe, but Anne never stood a chance against Ketty and her son in your heart. I will never let Anne be an option for you again. Tim's voice turned hoarse. Selena, why are you being so aggressive? Can't we go back to how things were? You and Ketty's family have it good, not me and Anne. I rolled my eyes, picked up my cup, and took a sip of warm water. I need a complete husband, and Anne needs a complete father's love. Clearly, you can't provide that, so we better part ways while we can. If you refuse the divorce, I might just have to chat with the sisters-in-law about how you've devotedly cared for Ketty's family while ignoring your own. I finished speaking and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. Considering your reputation, you might not be affected much. But Ketty, alone with in-laws in a rural area, who knows what could happen to her? Ketty is Tim's weak spot. Upon hearing my threat to her, he immediately lost his composure. Ketty is so innocent and kind. How could you use such rumors to hurt her? If you want a divorce, you'll get your wish. I'll file the application tonight. If not for the arranged marriage and my grandfather's insistence, do you think I would have married you? Selena, don't overestimate yourself. After 6 years of marriage, I finally understood why Tim married me. It was for the arranged marriage. But the real reason was Ketty. She had chosen Charles, who appeared more promising. Tim's unspoken love died before it began, becoming an untouchable taboo. With pressure from his grandfather, marrying me, someone who would please the elders, seemed like the next best thing. I entered the marriage with hope. Tim treated it as a duty. That's how we ended up here, ending in misery. Tim stormed back to the bedroom and slammed the door shut. I sat in the living room, realizing my cheeks were wet. It was my tears. Tim didn't waste any time, filing for divorce the very next day. Considering Tim was a high-ranking officer with a promising future, his peers were shocked by the sudden application. They even called me in to find out why. I wanted to deal with Ketty after the divorce was finalized. To the leaders, I only said that our feelings had broken down and we couldn't keep living together. They advised me to consider the child, but I insisted on the divorce, steadfast in my decision. Ultimately, personal freedom in marriage can't be forced. They told me to wait at home for their decision, promising to take it seriously. On the way, I picked up Anne from Lisa's apartment downstairs and brought her home. I didn't expect to see Ketty waiting for a long time at my door. Ketty was attractive, otherwise, she wouldn't have caught the eyes of Charles and Tim. Though she moved behind the scenes and became a mother, she remained slim and enchanting. Our divorce news had spread through the complex. It wasn't surprising she knew. She probably came to flaunt. Thick-skinned, isn't she? Did the slap at the hospital not make a lasting impression? I invited Ketty inside and sent Anne to her room to play with her toys. When I came back, she was already comfortably seated on the sofa. It was Ketty's first time in my house. She was actively observing the decor with greedy eyes. Seeing me sit, she quickly began her performance. Selena, seeing and healthy makes me feel relieved. I'm glad both kids are okay. You aren't still mad at me, are you? I gave her a fake smile. Of course not. I was impulsive that day. Does your face still hurt? Ketty's face stiffened. I had put all my strength into that slap. It was natural for it to hurt for 2 or 3 days. Ketty cared most about her looks, of course. She'd be embarrassed. But thin-skinned people get nowhere. Thick-skinned ones get what they want. She wouldn't give up until she met her goal. Selena, I heard you and Tim are getting a divorce. Is that true? She was fishing for information, revealing her true intent. I put down the glass of water and smiled at her. It's true. Tim's divorce application has already been submitted. Ketty got a positive answer and couldn't hide the smile at the corner of her mouth, which she quickly suppressed. You've been married for 6 years and have a daughter, Anne. How did it come to this? It seemed like she was worried, but she was actually gloating. I didn't feel like pretending with her. You're the happiest about my divorce with Tim, aren't you? With how Tim feels about you, there's no doubt he'll consider remarrying you first. Then you, Johnny, and Tim can be a real family. Ketty blushed at my pinpoint accusation. You're misunderstanding. Charles and Tim are good brothers. Tim has been taking care of Johnny and me all these years, out of respect for Charles. She wants to have everything both ways. Well, I won't hold back then. I sneered. Does Charles know his good brother has taken over his role as husband and father? After you gave birth, Tim brought you nourishing soups, made formula for the baby, washed diapers. Whenever he had free time, he was at your place, fixing water pipes, repairing electrical issues. Even for something minor like, during your period, he'd bring you hot water bottles and brown sugar water. When there was a thunderstorm, you'd call him saying the baby was scared and needed his dad. I'm curious. Didn't Charles die heroically? How is Johnny supposed to find his dad? Or do you teach Johnny to call Tim daddy? Ketty looked like a frightened rabbit, tears welling up. Selena, how can you think that of me? Johnny is so pitiful. He never got to know his dad. I only ever show him Charles' picture and teach him to call him daddy. I couldn't care less about who Johnny calls daddy. I just couldn't stand Ketty's poor act anymore. It's just us here, so drop the act. You chose Charles because you thought he had a brighter future, but then he died young, and you barely had any good days. So you looked around and decided Tim was your best bet. For 1, he had a brotherly bond with Charles, and 2, I paused deliberately. You knew from the start Tim had feelings for you. So after Charles' death, you used the childbirth and the baby to tie Tim to your life, making him act like your husband and Johnny's father. The more someone invests, the more they cherish, right? Weren't you pleased when Tim chose to save your son at the hospital? After fishing for so long, all you need is to get rid of me, and you'll finally have the good life, with both status and wealth. Seeing that I've unveiled her true thoughts, Ketty stopped pretending. She pulled out a handkerchief and wiped her tears, no longer looking sad. Is it wrong to want a good life? It's Charles' bad luck that he died young and left me with a son. She sneered at the mention of her son. Johnny just eats and sleeps. Worthless, but his Charles' son. Wouldn't Tim take care of his brother's child? I often called Tim for help, under the pretext of the child. By showing a bit of weakness, I made him pitiful towards me. She smoothed out the crease in her dress proudly. Women should act weak to get men's sympathy. Tim is totally devoted to me now, don't you see? Sugarcoating her affair with a married man is just disgusting. I showed my disgust, not wanting to talk further. Okay, you're almost there. Tim is yours. Wish you both everlasting happiness. Right then, the door opened and Tim walked in, looking upset. The door was ajar. Who knows how much he heard? Seeing Tim, Ketty reverted to her innocent demeanor, quickly explaining her presence. Tim, I heard about your divorce and came to talk to Selena. But Selena, Tim's expression was cold and his voice stern. Ketty, this isn't your concern. Go home. Johnny's waiting for you. Ketty knew how to read the room and took her leave, knowing success was within reach. Now it was just him and me in the empty living room. Did you mean what you just said? I looked at him, puzzled. I said a lot. Which part are you asking about? Tim gritted his teeth and repeated, wish you both everlasting happiness. Of course I meant it. True love deserves applause. Tim sat beside me, facing me directly. You're in such a hurry to push me to someone else. We're getting a divorce. Why play coy? I pushed him away. I was clear yesterday. In 6 years, you haven't been a good husband or father. Instead of being unhappy together, let's part ways. You agreed to the divorce. Great. If not, I'll take Anne and move back to Grandpa's house. We can live separately. And besides, Don't you want to marry Ketty and have your happy ending? I wasn't backing down. Tim finally relented. I owe you Anne. If you want a divorce, so be it. You take Anne. I won't be able to take care of her properly. I'll leave all the money to you, and I'll send child support every month. I snorted internally. Can't take care of a child. Haven't you been doing just fine with Johnny? Lies. But Tim agreeing to the divorce was the best possible outcome. I got up and went back to Anne's room, leaving him alone in the living room. Having gotten the result I wanted, I had a great night's sleep. In the few days waiting for the divorce papers, I slowly packed up mine and Anne's things. I put some essentials in the suitcase and sent the winter clothes back home. The house was left to me by my grandparents when I became an adult. Grandma always said a woman's house is not just a house, it's her confidence and fallback. Now it seems Grandma was really farsighted. Another 10 days passed and the divorce was finalized. Tim and I went to complete the divorce procedures. I bought 2 train tickets to Philadelphia. Before leaving, I went to say goodbye to those women. I casually mentioned the special relationship between Ketty and Tim. How Tim had been caring for Ketty and her son like a husband and father, and how much Ketty and her son depended on Tim. Those women, with their monotonous lives, love this kind of juicy gossip. Even without punishment, Ketty would be isolated. After all, everyone has a man at home, and they don't want to invite trouble. The day we left, it had just rained, and the weather was a bit cooler. The train station was packed with people. I sat in the waiting hall, and took out a thermos to give and some water. Suddenly, I heard someone call my name. The voice was familiar. Selena. I stood up reflexively, and saw Tim frantically searching in the bustling hall. He turned and saw me, running over to hold me tightly. Next to my ear, I heard his excited, regretful whispers. Selena, I see you again. This isn't a dream, not a dream. I love you. I haven't liked Ketty for a long time. All these years, I only cared for her out of guilt and stubbornness. I'm sorry. I've loved you for a long time, but my insensitivity hurt you. From his words, I guessed he had been reborn just like me. But so what? The damage was already done. It was my luck to get a second chance and save my daughter. I've truly felt the pain of losing a child. Those biases and neglect were real. I'll never leave my and my daughter's happiness in others' hands again. Divorce was certain. I won't look back. I pushed Tim away coldly, looking at him with indifference. We got the divorce papers yesterday. Who you like has nothing to do with me anymore. Tim grabbed my hand, slightly trembling. Selena, you came back too, didn't you? Let's forget about Ketty. Let's start over, just the 3 of us. I forcefully pulled my hand from his, looking him in the eye and seriously refusing. No, the hurt, pain, and grievances were all real. I no longer have expectations for you. Tim's eyes drooped with disappointment, sensing my resolute decision. The train was about to depart. Anne and I had to catch our train. Goodbye, Tim. Without looking back, I picked up my suitcase and held Anne's hand, walking toward the train. Behind me, I heard Tim's excited shout. Selena, I won't remarry. I'll always love you. I chuckled indifferently. Divorced? What does it matter to me if you remarry or not? From now on, we are strangers. Only Anne connects us. With the conductor's assistance, Anne and I found our berths smoothly. The train slowly started moving. I watched the scenery outside the window gradually retreating. A train only moves forward, never back. Life is the same. We must keep moving forward and never look back.